I'm sure you all think now that the only way to get ahead is to introduce the owner of an NFL franchise to his wife. Let's hope it was more than that. But at any rate, my thanks to the committee and my congratulations to all the honorees tonight. I would hope that many of you who know me from this community where I grew up know that I never wanted to be someone bigger than myself, but I did want to be worthy of the men and women that I admired and the people who set the course for what became my professional life. And so to that end, let me thank a few people. Chuck Newman of the Philadelphia Inquirer, Miles Tannenbaum, the first professional sports owner I worked for. Certainly Carl Peterson, as Clark said, who probably more than anyone made it possible for me to have a professional football experience and career. To Marty Schottenheimer and Dick Vermeil, the two finest coaches I worked with over my career. To three college friends, Art and Jim Hunter and Dave McGarity, who have been with me through all the highs and lows of my life. To Dr. Dennis McElnay, a member of this community who taught me a great deal about public relations. To Pro Football Hall of Fame honoree Rick Goslin, from which I learned very much about the world of professional football. And to my close friend Bob Gretz, who I've known since he covered St. Francis basketball for the Johnstown Tribune Democrat, and later we ran into each other as we worked together when he covered Chiefs football for the Kansas City Star. The committee VP, Lisa Georgiano, always promoted me in my hometown, and to my good friend Susie Egan, who did likewise. And finally, the two newspaper men who never forgot what a local newspaper was for, to cover local sports and local sports figures, Neil Riddell and Jim Lane. Carl Sandburg wrote, "Nothing happens unless first a dream." And while I believe that dreams and dreaming have probably caused as much harm as they've done good, I'd be less than honest if I didn't say, like any boy growing up in Altoona in the 1950s and 60s, I dreamed of sports and a sports career. But the sports heroes I admired had virtues and capabilities beyond those of an average boy like me. My desire to emulate them was very great, but I never succeeded in approaching their high standards. But what I learned was that even the average, the ordinary, can find success, and even the fearful can achieve things, and it didn't necessarily have to be on the field of play. Let's be honest. The closest I was going to get to any field of play was going to be the sideline, the press box, and if I worked hard enough and learned the business, perhaps the front office of a professional sports franchise, which is where I settled. Football in Kansas City and in Philadelphia, where I did my work, was more than a game when I was there, and I was lucky to be part of it. The great sportsman Edward Bennett Williams used to call this life contest living, living for the games and their outcomes, and then no matter what the outcome, preparing to do it all over again, except better next time. If you work in sports, as everyone up here has, you certainly find out that every year is a new one. Every season is new. And that's the way sports is in this country. It runs on a natural cycle, natural annual cycle. For some people, it fades with age, but for me, the past remains a vivid panorama, a source of revelation and anxiety. The victories are there, but so are the heartbreaking defeats. And along the way, I've been able to gather a few honors, realize some modest success, work with some of the great players and coaches of my time, many of them who I still continue to have relationships today. I had a particularly wonderful wife who was like another PR person for me, and I can't tell you how much important that was to making my career very successful, as was my daughter, who has been our life. I've had wonderful parents who grew up in this community and lived here their entire lives. Each of us on this dais tonight and in the audience has had to find their own path. Of that, I'm pretty sure. Some of those paths will be noisy and exciting, and others peaceful and quiet. No one can say which is the better. For me, the most rewarding moments have not been the most obvious. The Jaffa Mosque on a cold winter's night with my father, the slap of a basketball on the old mosque floor, the smoke from thousands of barbecue grills outside Arrowhead Stadium as the Chiefs claw their way back to respectability after years of disappointment, the jubilation of a humid night in Tampa after our first USFL championship. The arms of my daughter wrapped around me as confetti fell from the sky in Miami as the Chiefs realized their victory in Super Bowl 54. And finally, tonight, back here, where it all began. Thank you so much for this evening and for this recognition.
Beautiful job. Awesome. Beautiful job. It comes naturally.